The world of theater is a field that is constantly growing, changing, and adapting. Countless creative minds have brought their own unique styles and stories to theater, each altering the world of performance in their own ways. However, some changes have withstood the test of time and given us the theater we have today. The human mind is unique. No two people are the same. Since the dawn of time, mankind has been exploring concepts, ideas, urges, and desires and translating them through performance. Mankind has an inept desire to be creative, to make something out of nothing, and some individuals harness that creativity through performance. As we guide you through our museum, keep in mind the various aspects of human civilization that led to our modern-day theater. Note the subtle changes that soon became revolutionary, and the figures that first lit the fire. Welcome to the Museum of Theatrical History. We begin our journey in ancient Greece, on the island of Lesbos. Here lives the poet and musician Arion. Considered semi-legendary, Arion lived in the principality of Mythema, where he was known as a musician and a poet. Not much is known about the life of Arion, as none of his verses survived, and the only histories to mention Arion were by Herodotus. However, a dictionary from Byzantium known as the Suda does exist, which credits Arion to have flourished during the 38th Olympiad, placing him in the years 628 to 624 BCE. The poet is credited with being the creator of the dithyramb, a choral hymn sung and danced in the honor of the god Dionysus, the Greek god of fertility. This creation would be the predecessor of Greek performances, including satyr plays, tragedies, and comedies. Arion putting the dithyramb to literary composition is what enabled the start of Greek theater and popularized the performance style. We continue our journey in the year 534 BCE, the island of Icaria in Greece. Here the dithyramb is wildly popular, the art of having been practiced and performed for nearly a century. Yet a lone singer is not satisfied with his role in the chorus. During the acclaimed City of Dionysia festival, a dithyramb troupe began to perform. Among the chants and the songs, a single solitary actor stepped out of line and takes on the role all of his own. This man was Thespis, the first actor to appear in a scripted drama on an Athenian stage. His troupe won the contest, and theater was changed for good. Thespis is highly regarded as the first actor to create the solo act, at least in the ancient Greek world. His bold choices led to a complete innovation of theatrical performance. Thespis is mentioned by Aristotle in his book, The Poetics, for his innovations to theater, such as the use of masks to show various characters, connecting the chorus to the plot, and telling the stories, most notably tragedies, which were a new genre. Whether or not Thespis was the very first actor to ever perform on stage alone remains a mystery, but what is known is that the decisions of Thespis to perform as an individual sent a tidal wave of change to Greek theater. This lone actor began the custom of individual characters and scripted dialogue, which would enable further developments not 50 years later. Dithyramb theater led to the development of Greek tragedies, a genre that birthed immensely popular playwrights such as Sophocles, Euripides, and Aeschylus. Although all three playwrights dramatically changed the world of theater through their tragedies, we'll be focusing on Aeschylus and his accomplishments. Aeschylus lived between the years 523 and 456 BCE, during which he became well known as a writer of tragedies. Having written over 80 plays, the real tragedy is that only 7 have survived. Nevertheless, the impacts of Aeschylus were monumental on the theater world. The use of individual characters in a performance by Thespis has grown in popularity. However, it wasn't until Aeschylus's drama that a secondary actor was added to the mix. This fundamental change allowed for actors on stage to interact with one another. It created the need for multi-person dialogue and decreased the need for a large-sized chorus. In Aeschylus's plays, the main 2 actors would portray various characters, switching between masks during the performance. The playwright's changes were truly a step in the direction of scripted plays and allowed for the later creation of stock characters. Where there is theater, there will be criticism. Curiously, the first recorded theatrical criticism came from none other than Aristotle himself, in the shape of his book, The Poetics. Aristotle lived between 384 to 322 BCE, and is known more for his philosophy than his artistic views. However, the Poetics share valuable insight and analysis of Greek performance and plays. Not only did the Poetics regard histories about Arion and Thespis, but also laid out a clean template of the various elements of tragedy that, in his view, Aristotle thought were the most important. These elements are the plot, the characters, the thought, the diction, the melody, and the spectacle. Aristotle went on to criticize theater as an imitation of life, which could be an insult or a compliment depending on your goals as an actor. Although this book could be brushed off as the ramblings of someone who doesn't fully grasp theater, the analysis of a tragedy by Aristotle surprisingly held up and was later translated into different languages. Aristotle's Poetics greatly influenced the theater of the Middle Ages after the revitalization of theater in Europe. As the Roman Empire flourished, so did its culture. By 300 AD, Christianity had risen in popularity as a religion and was subsequently banned in Rome. For centuries, Christians were persecuted and tortured, until 313 AD, when Emperor Constantine I the Great made Christianity legal through the Edict of Milan. 10 years later, Christianity would take over the empire and become the official religion. With the rise and spread of Christian practice across Europe, other religions were banned, and in the same era, activities deemed inappropriate by the Christian Church were banned as well. Theater fell to the laws of Christianity, and for centuries, the theater world was silent. We continue our journey to the cold and damp lands of Winchester, England, where theater would be reborn in the most unlikely of places. In the 10th century, there was a seldom time for recreation, and not many fun things to do. In lieu of entertainment, people went to church, to listen in Latin to the stories of the Bible. In 909 AD, Saint Ethelwald of Winchester is born. The boy grows up in a highly religious household and thus dedicates his life to his faith. Halfway through the century, Ethelwald devises an idea to add excitement to Mass, and writes the Benedictorial, a publication that paved the way for monastic reformation in England, as well as the rebirth of theater. Although Ethelwald didn't know he would revise theater, his publication was essentially an early script. Within the Benedictorial, Ethelwald writes the Quem Quaerteris, literally translating to, "Whom do you seek?" The Quem Quaertus was the first liturgical play. Ethelwald wrote in details a script to be acted out by 4 members of the clergy to depict the discovery of the empty tomb of Christ on Easter. The script called for 1 angel and 3 Marys to speak back and forth to each other in hymn. Although this practice looked suspiciously like theater, it was not outright banned due to its religious nature. Moreover, this use of theatrical reenactment brought about a new excitement to Christianity, and soon theater rose again in the form of liturgical drama. Without Ethelwald's Quem Quaertus, theater would not have made its comeback during the 10th century. Centuries passed, and liturgical drama gradually evolved into recreation. By the 16th century, Italian theater had expanded into the world of comedy and stock characters, and leading that journey was Andrea Calmo. Born in 1510 in Venice, Calmo was an actor and author credited with the creation of Commedia dell'arte. Calmo wrote 6 comedies in his lifetime: Las Spagnolas, La Salsusa, La Fiorina, La Posione, L'Auroriana, and Il Travaglio. Through his writing and performances, Calmo pioneered commedia as a masked theater genre, writing the stock character Pantalone. Many troupes would go on to adapt this form of theatrical performance, giving way to improvisation, slapstick, and pantomime. Calmo's focus was on the entire performance as a whole rather than the text, and revolutionized comedy in Italian theater. Commedia dell'arte would remain vastly popular all throughout Europe until the 18th century. Kamel's work as an actor, comedian, and author truly changed comedy and led to the evolution of the genre. No history of theater would be complete without the Bard himself. Considered to be the greatest English author of all time, William Shakespeare changed how the English language could be utilized. Shakespeare's plays are undoubtedly the most well-known and frequently performed. Through his writing, Shakespeare expanded the English vocabulary by creating his own words and phrases, popularized the use of blank verse, changed the expectations of what a play was through tools such as characterization, combined comedy and tragedy into new subgenre in plays such as Romeo and Juliet, and revolutionized poetic verse and meter through his hundreds of sonnets. If you ask a person to name a play by Shakespeare, they will always know at least one. Need we say more? Shakespeare is truly the bard, and for good reason. After the Renaissance and revolution of Shakespearean theater, we find ourselves at the tail end of the 19th century, where realism in theater has begun. Known as the father of realism, Henry Ibsen has written some of the most controversial and yet well-loved plays of modern theater. His most influential, however, is Hedda Gabler. Published in 1890, Hedda Gabler is the story of a woman, Hedda, who finds herself trapped in a house and marriage that she does not want. The play itself was regarded as highly controversial at the time of release due to its unconventional topics. Hedda is an adult woman who finds herself to be troubled mentally and emotionally. She strives for a position of power in her life and seeks to shape her husband's destiny. Ibsen describes his play as expressing the tragedy of life and the self-emancipation unattained through failure and faults. Hedda expressed her innermost desires out loud to the audience, desires that were regarded at the time as abnormal urges. Furthermore, Hedda has characters that are expressed through dialogue rather than dramatic narrative explanation. The play originally received cold reviews due to its shocking nature, but later gained acceptance and praise as one of Ibsen's masterpieces. Hedda Gabler would go on to influence playwrights such as Strindberg and Chekhov in the movement of realism. Ibsen's influence, particularly with Hedda, would pave the path for realism in theater and allow for the subjects of controversy to be touched upon. Eugene O'Neill describes Ibsen's plays as intensely human and understandable. Continuing our journey to the start of the 20th century, we see the evolution of theater as it approaches a revolution in acting itself. Konstantin Stanislavski was a Russian theater practitioner known for his directing, his character work, and above all, his revolutionary training system. The Stanislavski system is an approach to training actors that derives from the art of experiencing. It allows for actors to search for inner and outer motives for an action. His techniques try to get actors to connect to their characters on a deeper level, better understanding their desires, fears, and goals. Stanislavski later elaborated his system with the method of physical action, which used physical responses and took direction from the play's given circumstances. His ideas spread westward and were translated into various languages. His system is now widely accepted as a common method of actor training and preparation. Moreover, his system later influenced other actors such as Stella Adler, Michael Chekhov, and Richard Boleslavsky. We end our journey in America at the turn of the 20th century. Theater is popular and American theater is spreading its wings, and the musical has grown into a genre entirely of its own. This genre, however, is clunky and confusing, songs often being smashed into stories, simply adding to the length of a production. There is potential, and who better to shine the stone than composer Jerome Kern. Kern is the father of the book musical. He revolutionized the genre entirely through his work as a composer. Writing nearly 700 compositions, Kern worked tirelessly to combine plays with music in a coherent way. He wrote songs that added to the plot of the story and made the productions thoroughly enjoyable. His new musical masterpieces made the popularity of musicals skyrocket. Curran collaborated with Oscar Hammerstein on Broadway musicals, his work making him a legend. His most notable shows are Oh Boy, Oh Lady, and Showboat. Although not all of his shows are as popular on modern Broadway, the legacy of Jerome Kern remains alive and well. Without Kern, the genre of the musical would not be nearly as popular and beloved as it is today. He was, and remains to this day, one of the greatest composers in American history. Thus ends our journey of theatrical history, from ancient Greece chorus to liturgical dramas, to Shakespearean tragedies, to Broadway. Theater is an art form that connects the world. We are surrounded by performances each and every day, and we are all in our own ways performers, whether we know it or not. No matter the struggles, the barriers built, the storms raging overhead, creativity endures. And as long as humans roam the earth, theater will exist in one form or another. We thank you for your visit today and hope you will join us again soon.